how to put English on the basketball.
Hello, welcome to a new episode of With the English Podcast with myself, as usual, Glenn, and my co-host Sam. This week, we're joined by another special guest, another cornerstone of the UK NBA fan community, James from Clippers UK. James, thanks for coming on. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, guys. Yeah, really honored to jump on the podcast with you, and yeah, excited to talk all things Clippers and UK NBA stuff.
Yeah, our first Clippers fan. Even though one half of us is a Lakers fan, we can't not have some rivalry in the house. At
Yeah,
some points. And this is our first recording where there's been some actual NBA action played. So I think we should definitely start off with how we see the Clippers start to the season. How has that gone so far?
I think it's been surprising for everyone, maybe who's not a Clippers fan. I think a lot of the media and fans of other teams were perhaps quite low on the Clippers coming into the season. I think reasonably so with the news that everyone heard about Kawhi Leonard. But the Clippers have gone in a completely new direction this season. Obviously, we've lost Paul George, which we can absolutely touch on.
We can.
Um, but they've gone into the season with a bit more of like a defensive mindset, which I think is welcomed. I don't think we've been like the defensive team we wanted to be over like the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George era. I think moving into Intuit Dome and obviously with Kawhi being out, it made sense to maybe go all in on defense, and they've made some good signings. Yeah, really interesting defensive personnel that they brought in to, I guess, try and replace Paul George. And over the first three games, I mean, standing at 2 wins, 1 loss right now. We've played the Nuggets, played the Suns and Warriors last night, and I think to come out of that with 2 wins and a loss is it feels great. I think like I said, there was potentially a lot of gloom around our start to the season, and people were rating us perhaps even like not going to finish in the playing spots, which for a team that have had a winning season 13 years in a row is sort of a bit depressing. But we've started great, and we're currently the third ranked defense in the league, and that's shown in all three games, particularly the first night. I mean, that went to overtime against the Suns. We could have absolutely been 3-0 right now with like the first win in Intuit Dome. But I think the other two games we played, Denver and Warriors last night, we look pretty good considering obviously we've only really got James Harden as like the classified star in the team. I think the other role players have stepped up.
You mean
Interested to hear what you guys think.
you mean the system? That's
The
what you
system,
mean. The
exactly.
system, yeah.
And he came out. A lot of the media have been asking about like how the team responding to Paul George leaving, and he came out recently. I think it was an interview with Shams, and he said that it's an opportunity for him to take more usage, which he's absolutely relishing. Like everyone knows, James Harden's career plays the best when it's like him on the offense, and it all runs through him. And I mean, yeah, he's been great. He's been pulling all the strings. I think he had 18 or 16 or 18 assists against the
I
Nuggets the other night.
I mean, that's only a
Balled him
short
out,
sample size. We're only three
of
games in, but
course.
I
Yeah.
think he's leading in assists at the moment. I think for
Yeah.
James Harden, he's gone from the Nets, which was a three-star team at the time he moved there. He's then gone to Clippers, which again, three-headed monster in PG, Kawhi, and James Harden.
Mhm.
He's probably better suited to be part of a two-star team. And lo and behold, with
Yes.
Kawhi's injury issues, he is the star at the moment. And he doesn't seem to be, I guess his game doesn't warrant him to be the most athletic. So he doesn't need to rely
No.
on being that sort of player. So I guess, not no pun, the system he's playing is being the system, but it sort of works in his favor.
Yeah. I think they came into the off season. Obviously, they lost Paul George and instantly went out and got, I think, arguably some of the best like defensive role players you can get that were available.
Yeah.
So we got Derek Jones Jr., who was
Hmm.
amazing in the round one series against us last season. Arguably, I think the player of that round. He's just so dominant on the defensive end, and he's so athletic. And that's those sort of players have been what the Clippers have missed in profile, I think, over the 2-1-3 era as we called it for Kawhi and Paul George. We missed some of those athletic younger players, and I think as the era went on, perhaps we're getting more older role players. So he's been an excellent fit. We swapped out Russell Westbrook for Chris Dunn, which has been night and day. And although I think
Ha-
Westbrook has gone,
I was going to ask you, how was your Russell Westbrook experience?
there's no way to explain it other than it was the Russell Westbrook experience for every team since OKC days, which is he works really hard. He's got incredible intensity, and I think he grew into a
Mm,
pretty decent defensive player. But when he's got the ball or when he's like taking a shot, he's going to hurt your team, and you're seeing it right now with the Nuggets. I think they've lost the first two games, and in the minutes that he's playing, they're like net negative. He's not
yeah,
making any shots. So it was a
yeah.
horrible experience, to be honest. And I've been a big fan of his. So it was great to see him on the Clippers, and he was obviously transitioning from that time he had with the Lakers. But I think it obviously didn't go the same way. But it was potentially getting a bit sour, where he was getting left out of lineups because the team were noticing how bad we were when he was playing.
Mm,
Um, so that wasn't fun, but we have got a guy now, Chris Dunn, who's just an unbelievable defender, particularly like on the perimeter, like a point of attack defender. He was with the Clippers a few seasons ago in the G League, and he's gone to Utah, I think, over the last
yeah,
couple of seasons. And I think he's been one of the best like role players who defends the ball, point of attack, defends all positions, and he's been outstanding as well. So we brought those two guys in, Kevin Porter Jr. as well, who's not really hit the ground running, but is not a concern as of yet. Just the defensive players have all come together at the same time. We've also got Ivica Zubac, who's I think one of the better rim defenders in the NBA, who you'll know, Glenn,
yeah.
that we famously got for Mike Muscala back in the day. So that was a bit of a steal, and he's come into his
Daylight
own,
robbery, I
and he's
think.
yeah he's built a good connection with James Harden, and you can see that in the first few games. He's averaging 23 points, which is sort of unheard of for his career so far. And the Clippers haven't really leaned into him as like an offensive weapon before, but they are having to now because really the only offensive guys on the team, James Harden, Norman Powell, and Zubac, really the guys that can probably consistently score the ball, whereas the others are really like defending wings. So there's a reason our defense has been so good to start the season, but I'm a little bit concerned about our offense going forward and the number of threes we're taking. It's like one of the lowest in the league. There isn't a lot of like 3-point making. Spacing is obviously not great, but I think it's going to be like that when James Harden is like your one guy who's your all star, and I think it fits him because he does obviously he has to do some defensive work, but he's just surrounded by catch and shoot players who can defend all positions, so it makes the game easier for him. And like I
Yeah,
said, he's built this good relationship with Zubac where he can get easy shots off. He can help him become a better player as well, which we're seeing. So no, it's been a great start, and I absolutely can't complain. I think I was a little bit concerned about these first few games without Kawhi, but yeah, I never want to measure our success or how good we are after 3 games. I want to give it 10. I think that's the barometer that Tyler usually uses for his lineup. So we've still got a bit of a way to go, but I'll absolutely take it. I think we've had a brilliant start, potentially a bit unexpected, but yeah, we're in a good position right now.
Yeah,
So
just wanted.
I was just looking at James Harden's assists. He had 16 assists against Denver. Is that,
Yeah,
out assisting, probably one of the best passers in the league being Jokic. Just, yeah, incredible. Sorry, Sam.
I was gonna say I caught the highlights of your game the other day against Golden State, and I thought I didn't see a lot of him, but I was surprised Terrence Mann and he got 2 points because he was one guy when we had James Harden that everyone was saying, and then when you made the trade for where when Westbrook and that, and they were like, oh, he's because he was like one of those 6 man. It was like, and I remember a lot of
Mhm.
Sixers fans talking about we should get him in because he can do
Yeah.
spot and shooting, and that's what Harden likes to have is that spot up shooter. So is he? How has he been other games? Was he just unlucky? I think it was like 1 for 5 or something from the field. Is
Yeah. Yeah, so he famously part of that that trade and those rumors that just dragged on all of last year, right? He was the guy that we was keeping out of the trade talks. Like he was untouchable, and the trade seemed like it was relying on us, including him, right? Eventually, it got done, but yeah, he hasn't started the season, I guess, the way a lot of Clipper fans were hoping. I think it's just down to the way the team is constructed right now. And like I said, we've got a lot of wings who do the sort of same thing, and that sort of clogs the spacing up because he's not really a shot creator. But he I think over the first few games he has been shying away from some of the shots. I don't know what it is, to be honest. He does go through little spells like that. He went through one similar last year where his 3-point percentage was like through the floor, like it was
He's got a
terrible. But then
combined 10 points in 3 games.
yeah, but he's doing the work on the defensive end. He's
Hmm.
part of the reason we've got the third best defense. Yeah, it's been 3 games, but we've
Yeah, I
played
think
three very
it's
good offensive teams, right? So
I
this
think
is one
obviously
of
we're
those
talking
things. I
about a
think.
few things from the box scores, but I think it's easy to read a box score and think that player hasn't played well. And
Mhm.
people used to say that about Russ. Don't look at the box score. So I think yeah, if what your eyes are telling you is different to what the box score is saying, then that's all you want really for a player on your team, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that the takeaways from him is that he's been good defensively, but has been shying away from shots, which is not great for us because our offense is literally James Harden, Norm, and Zubac. So when they're not playing, who's scoring? So we are sort
Yeah.
of looking for like more scorers to come up. Um, and it
Oh,
is,
but
yeah, it's
Batum can
slim
do it.
pickings with,
I know he's the inbound
of
goat,
course, yeah,
but he won us a game in the playoffs, so we love Batum. We were gutted to lose him. So
yeah. I think
Aside,
we were speaking before. I was just say
yeah.
we were speaking before about like the connection between Clippers and Philly right now. But I just remembered that
Mm.
Batum one is quite a good one because he's quite a legend amongst Clipper fans, and he's like a fan favorite. So when he came back, everyone was so pleased. And there's an argument, I think, for him to be a starter going forward over Terrence Mann and give Terrence Mann some responsibilities for the bench unit, because Batum, his spacing and his like veteran leadership and the way he can just score, like his catch and shoot ability, I think is sort of levels above a lot of players in the league, and he comes up big in clutch moments, which I'm sure Sam you experienced last season. But he's had a lot of big moments for the Clippers, which is why he's so revered. I think
mhm.
he originally came from Charlotte on a buyout where he'd been miserable, and Charlotte fans still hate him because they paid him so much money. They ended up on the Clippers on basically a minimum deal, and he's got a decent resume of like game winners for the Clippers as well because he's great. I love Nico Batum. He's been awesome as well, to be honest.
Me and Sam say that it's easier to fall in love with role players over the stars
Mhm.
sometimes, or
Yeah.
most of the
Absolutely
time. I've seen a few posts
agreed.
recently. I want to go a bit left field. Talk to me about Jordan Miller.
Jordan Miller. So we drafted Jordan Miller 2023 draft, so start of last season. But he was more of a late second rounder. There wasn't a lot of expectations on him. The guy we took ahead of him, Kobe Brown, we took him late in the first round. So Kobe spent more time with the team, whereas Jordan Miller spent more time with the G League. And a lot of fans just started noticing how well he was playing for our G League team, sort of averaging 30 points almost across the G League, but not really getting the opportunity to show it. And that's sort of been the pattern for the Clippers over the last few seasons is that there's not a lot of opportunity for young players, and we haven't drafted very well. To be honest, since we drafted Terrence Mann, and then before that, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, to be honest, there's been a lot of misses, which is understandable when you're competing at the top and you've given up a lot of your draft picks, right? So you're
I
sort
mean,
of trying to find diamonds in the rough.
you could argue that SGA was an awesome pick, um,
Oh, he was amazing. Yeah,
but
unbelievable.
but unfortunately for a different team now.
Yeah, of course. But that was mostly due. We had what was he like? I think it was 12th or 13th pick, something like that. We haven't had a pick that low since that time. So the players we're bringing in are really development players who sometimes get an opportunity, sometimes don't. So Jordan Miller, after a great season in the G League, was playing summer league this season, and I think was robbed of the MVP for the summer league because he was absolutely amazing. And then preseason, there's more eyes on him from those sort of summer league performances, and he's still excelling even against like a higher level of opposition. And I think he's got to a point now where a lot of Clippers fans are like, he's a guy we need. So I guess the best way I can explain Jordan Miller is he's a bit like SGA, to be honest. He's not an out and out point guard, but he can create his own shots. He can create shots for other teammates. He's a two-way player, and he does remind me of Shea the way he plays, where he can finish at the rim. And a lot of those attributes, I feel like, is what we miss from our bench unit right now. We don't really have a guy like that. Like I said, we signed Kevin Porter Jr., who's maybe similar, but he hasn't started well. And I think a lot of Clipper fans do look to the younger players to try and get someone, to come into the team and make a name for themselves. And he's been speaking for the postseason about wanting a contract coming into this year because he's still on a two-way deal. But I think he absolutely deserves it with the Clippers. And there's some players in front of him who I do think if given the opportunity, he would step in front of them. I think I've seen enough from those development games that he should start getting minutes. And I think Tyloo did say in a recent media interview that he trusts him. So he's one to look out for in the future, I think. And with this new CBA deal, you see it across the league. The successful teams are reliant on some of these young players because of the way their contracts work and how they can sort of finance some of their more expensive players. Is that they're sort of relying on getting instant impact. I think teams like the Nuggets have got 3 players in their rotation and they drafted in the last like 2 or 3 years. Even the Celtics, you could argue some of the players that they've just sort of brought out of nowhere. I do think it's often with young players, it's like when you desperately need a type of player, one just sort of comes at the right time. So I think he could be big for the Clippers this year, and one to keep an eye on. He hasn't played yet, but I think
I was just saying
when our offense slows,
DMPs, isn't he?
Yeah, offense
Do
will
you
slow
think?
down, so we might be needed at some point.
Do you think it'll take a few injuries to get him into the rotation?
Yeah, I think so. And it's a packed schedule as well. We're playing the most back-to-back games we've ever had. I think there's a few other teams joining us in the number we're playing. I think it's something like 16. So I thought I might see him yesterday because although James isn't doing a lot, he's not doing as much as some other players in terms of workload, but he's going to get gassed because he's an older player. So I imagine there'll be a point where they maybe try and manage him a little bit. But yeah, if there's an injury to any player, he's going to be straight in. So I definitely keep an eye on him as one to watch because I think he could be big. As I said, we're more of a defensive team, and there will be games where we just can't score. And I think he's one that if you put him in, you might be surprised. So one to keep an eye on for the Clippers for sure.
If he's gonna do what Maxey did and listen to James, he could, because even though James left on a kind of a bad note with us because of the way that he obviously left, wanted in demand and stuff like that. And I think it was more his relationship with Morey than actually the whole organization as a whole. But Maxey always says, he puts a lot of his stuff into Harden. And I think there was a hug picture of Maxey and Doc Rivers after the first game, and you could just see in Maxey's face, like it tells that he's like, and Rivers tries to claim like he does with everything that he's developed him, but Maxey's very much behind Harden. So I think all these young guys that you've got that you can say create your own shot, get to him, maybe not be a traditional point guard, bit like James Harden, where I know Harden can do the point guard stuff, but he prefers especially in his Rocket days, and that preferred that high scoring volume, and that, like, if they learn from him, I think they'd be perfectly fine, and he can become a really good player. And that goes to any of the young players that you've got. That's a good thing about Harden is, he goes to strip clubs, he does all the other stuff off the court, but like it seems like when
basketball,
he wants to
lives
teach,
it.
yeah, exactly right. I think in the facility, he's probably a really good head to have, and he's probably going to help develop those players.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of unforgotten names with the with the Clippers. You've got Bones Highland as well, who came in a few seasons ago, but he's not really getting minutes because there's just not an opportunity for him. But
And
he's someone who's come out and said like how much he's learned about James. So
I like Bones Highland at Denver. I'm also
mm,
interested to know, I've seen clips of Kai Jones. Even in this highlight reel with Charlotte, like I think the league sort of forgot about him, and you've picked him
yeah,
up, and he could be an unsung asset for you guys.
yeah, because we had Plumlee last season, lost him, signed
Yeah,
Mo Bamba, but he has not played a minute because he's been injured. So Kai Jones sort of came in as that like third string big man, and he's been pretty good. There's some moments he just can't play because I think he's still young. He's still learning how to play on the defensive end, which is obviously big for someone of his size and the players he guards. But he offers something completely different that maybe Zubac doesn't offer, and that's his athleticism and the way he can run the floor as a big man
yeah,
is kind of scary.
he's got a
He's
bit of
been really good.
explosiveness,
Yeah,
and given the
I never
opportunity,
saw it. I never saw it
yeah.
because he just stuck at the G League. So we signed him to the
I didn't
Delaware
even know
Blue.
he was at Philly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
neither did
So
I.
another one. Well, and Mo Bamba. So last year we had both them on.
no,
I mean,
Bamba, yeah.
technically he wasn't on the roster. He was with the
Well,
Dome.
that's our one connection between all of us is Mo Bamba. He went from
Yeah,
us to Sixers and then off to the Clippers, and he barely
yeah,
played a minute for us.
He
yeah. I
played
mean,
a
he
bit
hasn't played a
for
minute
us.
yet.
Yeah, to be honest, from what I saw from him last year, he's okay, but he's not. He's probably a bit of a player that would been better in the early 2000s, late 90s with the slower pace of the game. Obviously with him not being that explosive sort of center, you can't. There's not many. I mean, Jokic is seen as slow, but he's probably quicker than what some of the guys were back then. And I remember we got in Jahlil Okafor, who would have been great in the 90s and early 2000s, but he's just not designed for this modern game. And I think Mo Bamba's probably like that. He's just a okay player. You need someone that's going to be semi-fast, and then collect those
Yeah,
rebounds and hopefully be able to shoot. Okay, Mo Bamba's shot is a bit. Nah, Whereas if Kai Jones, I was really willing to give him a go if they were going to call him up, and I think we might. I think we were. There was rumors we were going to call him up for one game, and then we never did, and he just stayed there. So I never got to see him play.
yeah. The backup big man role under Ty Lue is a bit of a weird role to have because if there's games where you're sort of trying to chase the game, he loves to go small ball, and that's when Batum plays the five. So typically, the person who's in the backup big position doesn't get tons of minutes. So last season we had Plumlee, and he's like a decent offensive player because he's pass the ball as well.
Mm.
But defensively, he's a little bit of a liability. So when that happens, that's when you bring in like a smaller guy, and Tyler loves to go small ball, and we've got a couple of players who could do that for us. So yeah, I've not got much expectation from Mo Bamba, but who knows? He's got a little bit of relationship with Kawhi. Actually, there's some link between them in their childhoods. Sort of grew up around like Simmer family or something. There was some connection there. So yeah, we'll see about Mo. But Kai Jones is sort of come from left field. Like he was sort of signed as a two-way player and has earned some minutes just from I guess luck of injuries and the performances he had in preseason were pretty good as well. But yeah, we'll see how he develops because he was someone I kept an eye on at Charlotte, and similar to you, Ken, about those highlights he looked outrageous, and we've not had a player like that for a long time. He reminds me a bit. His dunks remind me a bit like Blake Griffin, the way he can
Mm.
shift the ball and be athletic around the rim. So
Yeah,
yeah,
don't get me
we'll see
wrong.
how he progresses.
I can be guilty. As soon as a player is linked with the Lakers, I'm onto YouTube,
Hmm.
checking the highlights, and then making my grading
Yeah,
from that. But no, I think like I said, the league sort of forgot about him a little bit, and hopefully he can become a important player for the Clippers going forward. So on the court, there are obviously signs of optimism for the Clippers. Off the court, it's a pretty crucial time for the Clippers. In a good sense, you've probably got one of the best owners in the league, if not the best owner. He's just moved you into the flash new Intuit Dome. He's
Mhm.
changed your identity. He's changed the perception. Even changed the logo of the franchise. What can we expect from the Clippers, I guess, in the next 5 years?
Well, yeah, the Clippers are in a bit of a transitional phase, obviously, since losing Paul George. And I think the way Steve has set us up now, with obviously our own arena, own identity, being in a big market that a lot of players want to go to, I think if the question is about the next 5 years, it's who's the next big free agent to hit the market, and that's who they're going to go after. And there'll be a few names in there. I don't know off the top of my head, but that will be the way it sort of transitions over the next 5 years. I don't think there'll be more than a season of us being sort of a non-playoff team. Steve has mentioned in interviews before that he doesn't believe in tanking or rebuilding. He's win, 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 and he can anyone who's seen any interviews or even when he was back at Microsoft knows he's a very high intensity, high energy guy. He wants to win all the time, and like you said, he sort of set the franchise up for success, and it just really boils down to luck and decision making. Who are the next pair of stars they go for, and can they be healthy enough to play a full playoff series together, right? So I hope, yeah, next 5 years there's at least a really promising championship run for the Clippers. I still think this season there could be a championship run if the chips fall their way, but it's as we know is less likely with Kawhi's current state of injury. But I think that the next 5 years look really promising. We've finally got a home court advantage. I think we haven't had that since maybe some of the Lob City days where the Lakers weren't as good, and maybe the Clippers have been like the best team in LA for a little while, and they were attracting full attendances, and the games were cheaper. So when we were making playoff runs with that team, crypto was a pretty loud place. But the arena they've built now is more, I guess, akin to like Utah's arena, in the fact that it can generate quite a crazy atmosphere. And we saw that in the first game of the season where Kevin Durant was interviewed after the game about the wall which we've built in the Intuit Dome, which is like 51 rows just from the bottom to the top. And he said he just couldn't stop looking at it, which is great
I
for us
mean,
because that means, yeah, all those home games are going to be tough for the road team. So
It's home fans only there as well, and you can't.
yeah.
I don't. Yeah,
yeah,
you got to be. Yeah, you got to be. See. Yeah.
yeah. So they've done this, I guess, like fan pass, where if you have a season ticket there or buy a ticket there, you can only send it to someone who also has like a fan pass. So you have to basically prove that you're a Clipper fan. So they've just made it a bit harder for other teams' fans to get into that section. And I think that's always been a
Every
weird thing. Yeah,
Mhm.
every small detail has been thought about with that stadium. Every
yeah,
small detail. And for someone like myself, okay, I'm happy you're at the crypto because it is better for the Lakers, and we've been able to give
yeah,
our players a bigger dressing room, and we don't share with you guys anymore. But if we could have a
yeah.
stadium like the Intuit,
Mm.
it's something to behold. And
Mhm.
there's all the jokes that being in the Lakers' shadow and being the little brother, and that's going to come with obviously the success and legacy of the Lakers. But I think being in your own space is only going to be good for you guys and elevate you, and maybe not, and maybe take you more seriously as a force of a franchise in LA, which is going to be difficult to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been hard being, I guess, the other team crypto because although we've obviously had great moments there, we've not had moments like you guys have had with the legends that have gone through the Lakers franchise, right? And having to cover up the banners every night and things like that is obviously there are just minor details there which I think
Yeah,
have not worked in our favor. And to be
yeah,
included in that is also all of the early games we were forced to play as a result of sharing the arena, right? Because some days you'd have the Clippers and Lakers play on the same day. The Lakers just get prioritized just because they're, I guess, the bigger draw for the city, right? So
hmm
we've lost all those now, which as a UK fan, and like I can speak for the UK community, is kind of like it is hard because the team typically doesn't perform well or doesn't like those games. But for the UK fans, it's like that was some of the draw. It was, at least for me, when I was starting to follow the Clippers, is we had a lot of early games because of the crypto situation. So it'd always be on Sky or BT or wherever it was back in the day. We've lost those now. We don't. I think we maybe have one. I don't think we even have one afternoon game in LA. So those are like the little details which weren't working in our favor. Which now that we have our own arena, we can sort of control our schedule a bit more, which is
Yeah.
obviously helpful for the team. The arena is next to LAX. If you've ever been to LA, so the arena is in Inglewood, which is literally next door to the airport. And just like something interesting I noticed this week is that the players were practicing 30 minutes before their flight in the training center that's joined to the arena. So they have everything there. They have their practice facilities. I think they have some like offices and medical facilities and stuff. So they practice at Intuit Dome. They were practicing 30 minutes before their flight because obviously the airport is literally like 5-10 minutes around the corner or whatever it is. So they can really focus on basketball. And I think that's the overall point. It's been built for basketball by a man who's obsessed with basketball and really, really is desperate to win. And yeah, it's been great. He's going to be revered for years as, I guess, the Clipper man or whatever you want. I don't know what you want to call him, but he's going to be a legend just because of what he's done for the franchise, taking it from the dark period that a lot of fans might not know about the Clippers and the previous owner they had to the one they have now, who's just obsessed with winning and just loves the team. And yeah, it's great. It's absolutely great.
You almost touched on it there, and one of the main reasons we like to bring on fans onto the podcast from the UK is to find out how they sort of fell in love with the game that's mainly played halfway across the world and follow a team that's halfway across the world. So I guess when did you get into the NBA and why the Clippers?
So getting into the NBA, that happened around 2012. I think the first proper game I watched was either 2012 or 2013. It was the Spurs, Spurs' last championship, I believe. I was watching it on BT at the time. I just started to fall in love with the sport and immediately looked for a team. And my cousin had already been sort of big on American sports, NFL, basketball. He based his teams all in New York because his mum bought him like a Knicks hat when he was young. I didn't have anything like that, so I had to sort of choose. And he said, "Oh, why didn't you look at this team? They're doing really well." And it was the Clippers, and it was the Lob City era of the Clippers, and immediately fell in love with that style of basketball. Everything about the team, Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan. It was a really fun team to watch. Like I sort of previously mentioned, they luckily had a lot of early games, afternoon games, which I could always tune into on like a Sunday to watch the team. Obviously, like you'll know, Glenn, is that obviously it's tough supporting a West Coast team. The
Painful.
games are mostly at 3 a.m. and trying to do that with work or anything is very, very difficult. I've watched 2 out of 3 games so far. I had to watch the first game because there's no way I was going to miss the first night of Intuit Dome, but having to plan around that has been really hard. But yeah, I guess over the Lob City era, built more fandom of the team. And when I went to university, I don't know if either you guys went to uni, but you'll know that you like time isn't really a concept. So I was just thought watching every game at that point. I was staying up till 3 in the morning, watching the games. And when we signed Kawhi and traded for Paul George, obviously that was monumental because you'd just seen Kawhi drag the Raptors to their first championship, and then when he landed in LA, it was, oh, that's us now. Like it felt almost inevitable we were on that journey as well because he just looked undefeatable. And then also on top of that, we acquired Paul George, who was coming off a MVP season for OKC. So it was like, wow, we just added that to a already gritty team we had that 2018-19 team who took a couple games off the Golden State Warriors, who obviously had the KD and co, right? So we added those to that team, and it was like, okay, I've got to like, I want to be like following the season even more because I want to like follow every minute that happens, and I want to speak to Clipper fans. So I created Clippers UK, and yeah, I guess season after season has sort of snowballed and built, I guess, a community of just under like 100 UK fans, which anyone listening to this, or you guys, you've probably never met a Clipper fan in the UK. So for there to be 100 is, that fills me with a bit of pride because I before did not even know one. So to know 99 other is crazy, and to know there's people out there sort of going through the same things that I go through as a Clipper fan. Stress, exactly, is brilliant. And there are some fans in the community who watch every single game. I don't know how they do it, but everyone has their own story, whether it's like visiting LA on a trip and not being able to go to a Laker game, so you go to a Clipper game. There's all different stories throughout. So yeah, it's been great. And I think it was only really last season with the James Harden news, I was trying to report on it as much as I could. I say report, it's more just like who's reporting on the news, so I'll tweet it out. And it was I think it was the start of the Harden rumors that I found on like a podcast, and I tweeted it out, and no one had it on Twitter at all. And mine was the first tweet to sort of say that like the Clippers were looking at James Harden. There was no rumors before that. It was just mentioned as a sort of byline on a podcast. And my tweet got like 1 million impressions. And then from that point, my account has got bigger and bigger. And I've got more US fans who follow me now, which is great as well. And yeah, I've just started a podcast as well, it's just all sort of snowballed over the last season. I think in particular, before that, it was a bit more small, and I mainly use it as a vessel to really just throw out my thoughts on the team. I like to do like a bit of data stuff because that's my job. I work in like data analysis and stuff like that, so I like to look into the stats and things and post those. But yeah, the last year it's completely changed. It's completely changed, and yeah, it's been great. Although yeah, following the Clippers, as you probably know, is like it's been stressful. It's been stressful over the last few years. It always feels like something is going to go wrong. So that's been interesting, but I wouldn't change it because I feel like we're on a journey to just win one. And yeah, I just hope that it's in the next few years because yeah, it's been difficult. It's been difficult. What, yeah, 10 years or so I've been following the team. So
Well, one man can relate to you there, and that's Sam, because he has been waiting years to
I
see his
have.
Sixers team even get past the second
So,
round.
well, so hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm having an absolute melt. I need a new mic. Just checking here you can. Yeah, I certainly can. I went through the process there. It's easy when you don't have kids, I'd say, to like watch the games, like you say, university and stuff. You did give me some PTSD when you mentioned about Kawhi, winning it with the Raptors. That definitely was
of course,
a bad one. But but yeah, no, it's and it sounds like the Lakers arena, Clippers arena, sorry, is very much so like my court, like the NBA 2K where you've got everything in one place. So it
yep.
does sound like an exciting time to be a Lakers. I keep saying Lakers because of Glenn, a Clippers player. So you probably are going to become one of the
Insulting.
free agent teams, that people are going to want to play for going into next year. So it probably is an exciting
Yeah.
time to be a Clippers fan. And it's good that you got that impression, all those impressions on X to get that following. So it's really good, and hopefully your podcast does well. But yeah, we appreciate you coming on and giving your story because it is unique, and we learn so much from different people, don't we, about why they've become one, how they
Mhm.
became it. Like you say, probably the only equivalent's going to be New York, right? I reckon. I've got two kids I coach football this weekend, gone to New York. One couldn't get to a Knicks game, so they went to the Nets game, and one went to the Knicks game. So they're
Yep.
probably going to have one Knicks fan, Nets fan going forward. And
Our thoughts go out to the Nets fan.
I know, right? But yeah. So I think he might. He does kind of like the Bucks because he said he wanted to see Giannis, so he was quite excited. He got to see Giannis last night, but obviously they didn't do very well. But I said he was there for a viral moment.
Yeah,
And Simmons, again getting scared to go near the bucket. Um,
He was, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that hopefully that's not the free agent you go for in the summer, but
no,
yeah, yeah,
no,
you don't want
um,
him. But
no. But yeah, I've been to New York 3 times. One time there was no NBA basketball on, but I've not seen the Knicks play, and I really wanted to see the Knicks, but the tickets are just so expensive, right? So I've seen the Nets play twice. I went to Clippers Nets, which was the New Year's Day game in, I guess, just after the peak of COVID, but COVID was still a big thing and it was going through the league. And it was when you remember when you'd lose a player to COVID or something would happen, you'd sign just some random player like out of nowhere. There was all these like 10-day deals being dished out.
Yeah.
So we basically
Yeah.
had like half a team and we brought it to Brooklyn and we were playing KD and Harden and we won. We won with basically Terrence Mann as our best player. And I was there at like row 8 and I got Terrence was just behind me. You won't be able to see it, but I got Terrence Mann's headband that night. So I think it's those like small games that don't cost as much money, but the experience you can have from that compared to having to go to one of like the bigger, more popular teams, that can really like change your perception as a fan of the team. And I know that's the case for a lot of Clippers fans in LA. The reason they don't support the Lakers is because they were wanted to go to games and maybe couldn't afford it. So went to more Clippers games and then became fans because their tickets were always ridiculously cheap. And if you want to go to see the Lakers, you're talking hundreds of dollars, which for a lot of people is too much money. And like I said, that's the reason when I've been to New York, I haven't seen the Knicks because I think their tickets are really expensive as well. Whereas you can go to the Nets for $30-$40 and still watch NBA basketball. The second time I saw the Sixers, actually, I saw there's nothing particular about the game that I could tell you that you would remember, but it was last season. Embiid and Maxi played. So yeah, that's I think it's part of the reason why people become fans of teams is just the accessibility of it. And that's obviously not why I became a Clippers fan, but I know for sure it's why most Clipper fans are Clipper fans in LA, just because of how they can afford the tickets a bit more.
Well, I mean, you get to see Maxi and MB play is a good thing because it's very rare. When I go out, I always go out for three or four games at a time when we've got a home stretch,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's the Super Bowl because I follow the NFL. But yeah, the amount of times I've been out there twice for 3 game stretches under that era, and one game Miami Heat tickets they were $180, and for me and my mate who lives in Philly, and his tickets quite not like ridiculously bad tickets sort of thing, but like relatively okay. We're in the bar next to where the stadium is, well, the complex. Like I said, there's all stadiums in one area. And it comes out Embiid's questionable after being nothing all day. Then it comes out Harden's questionable, and it's like, oh my God. And then both are out, and then the ticket prices just suddenly went on StubHub, and his tickets were like
Yeah.
$30. We could have got like we were going to move like 20 rows to the front, and Maxi just took over. So there's always like that thing of like those games, like you say, random games where you get players play like being called up 2A players, stuff like that. But when you get to see those players play,
Mm-hmm.
it is fantastic. It makes you fall in love with the game. So it is.
So, Sam, when you book your next trip, you want to look out to make sure you're not playing any back-to-backs.
I know, right? Because well, I don't mind because I support the team, not not the player. Like James, I think us and the Clippers are being punished for the resting because we've also got 16 back-to-backs, but ours are all in the second half of the
Oh.
season. And funny enough,
Yeah.
who do we play on a back-to-back? We play Denver, so the league clearly don't want to see the matchup. The rumors of
Yeah.
them. All you have to do is Google Embiid versus Jokic and know who the better player is. But unfortunately, people don't look at that. And
Yeah.
then it's like the Messi Ronaldo debate with them too. I don't think they don't actually hate each other. I think they respect each other. And I think
Just,
It's just the
just don't
media.
play
Yeah.
against each other.
no, it's just tough, isn't it? Like on the back, and then Embiid played it, tried to play it, and then got yeah. Anyway, it's not a podcast about the Sixers, but
Yeah.
and Embiid's now just no, what he's done is he's been smart and gone, I'm going to copy LeBron James and I'm going to poach players. And that's what we did by taking Paul George.
Paul George. Yeah. Yeah. So I went to LA. My first games I've seen in LA in March. And I was lucky enough to get like a media pass. So the first two games were a back to back. And you might not have been aware of these games, but they were two games played in 23 hours between each other. Because what
Yes,
happened
yeah,
over that night was that the clocks went back, or no, the clocks went forward. So we lost an hour. And it meant that you almost had this impossible scenario of playing two games within 24 hours. So I
yeah.
covered
That's
both
pretty
those
bad.
games, and I think it was rough because I just landed the night before, had to get up early in the morning to then go travel to the arena and then come back again, and then the next day you got to do it all over again, even earlier than the night before, and that was rough because I didn't, I went there to see Kawhi, Paul George, James, and in that second game they didn't play. So yeah, it's just how it goes. And personally, I think there should be no back to backs. I think it's ridiculous that basketball is played back to back, and they want to
We had
prioritize the quality of the league with NBA Cup and
we,
stuff. I think it's ridiculous.
we had a back to back in pre-season. Work that one
Yeah,
out. That's that's that, that's
that's
that's led
one
that's led by
thing.
us. That's not the league. That's us doing that. I don't know.
Maybe it's to prepare you for those games because
Yeah,
yeah, some people think like I think it's easy to think these players are superheroes and
yeah, I
don't
know.
get
Yeah,
hurt, but there's a
superhuman.
reason
Yeah.
some of them pick up injuries more than others because of
Hmm.
just the volume, and you can't equate it to how it was years and years ago because it's just played at a more physical level.
Yeah.
They're practicing more and more intensity, and to do that in back to back scenarios even as a road team, right, is crazy. So yeah, I hope that's something they'll address in the future, but I don't think they will. They've obviously gone another direction and trying to make the games more entertaining rather than like the volume of games. I guess they're never going to change the volume of games because that's their revenue, right? So
No,
it's a
we
difficult
we
one.
def we definitely want quality over quantity, to be honest. To be honest. So,
Yeah.
James, our final segment is our X's and O's segment, and I won't butcher up the rules like I did last week. I'll read you three statements, and it's X if you disagree, and obviously a quick brief of why, and O
Mm-hmm.
if you agree. So the first one
Okay.
is Clippers will finish a top six seed.
Oh, you're starting off with a very difficult one.
This year, yeah,
Top
not at any
six.
time in the future, just this year.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course, of
this year,
course.
yeah.
So the Clip, like I think I mentioned on this pod already, the Clippers have had a winning season for 13 seasons in a row, right? And they've already started 2-1, small sample size. But I'm confident Kawhi comes back, and I think that's what it hinges on. So I'm going to say O for this one, and it's him coming back in the next couple months and sort of returning to the performances he had in the regular season last year, where he played 68 games, which was the most games he played since his, I guess it wasn't his final Spurs season because he sat that out, but his actual final season with the Spurs is the most games he's played since that point. And there was definitely a moment around the middle of the season last year where he was, I think he was an MVP, but he's never get put in those conversations because of the players that run those conversations, like Jokic, of course, and Embiid and Luca, right? So
Mm.
if he comes back and he's at those levels and you slot him into this team with the defensive nature that it's now got alongside James Harden, with Tyler as the coach, with our new arena, yeah, I think six seed is looks doable now, which I think many people might not have agreed with earlier in the before this. But like I said, it does hinge on him coming back. And I don't know if you caught any of our playoff series against Mavericks. When Kawhi returned, he looked like he'd never played basketball before. So we've not seen him since that point. He tried to play for Team USA in the summer, but they weren't happy with him. So he's come back and he's rehabbing, and he had a minor surgery just after that recall from the Olympics team. So we haven't seen him and he hasn't trained. But the noise from all the reporters is that he comes back soon, but there's just no timeline. And that's the story of Kawhi Leonard in LA. So I'm gonna say O for this one, but like I said, depending on Kawhi.
Yeah, health's obviously always important, and it is a stacked out West, so it will be interesting. Right, number two,
Yep.
the Paul George and SGA trade is the worst trade of recent times. You could
Can you
give
give
two
me
answers in this,
two?
really.
I was gonna say, can you give me 2 years to give my opinion because I want to wait until Kawhi leaves. That will be the trade is good, the trade is bad, and I think ultimately it depends. If the Thunder win a championship this season, then it potentially is the worst trade of all time because the strategy they've gone with has set them up with this team that, if you look now, is sort of scary. It's actually kind of
Mm.
terrifying that they're playing this way. And they've got one of my favorite players, which is Hartenstein, who was on the Clippers. And he has not even played a minute, and they're 3-0, and they're already looking dominant. So, uh, worst trade of all time. I don't know what I can equate it to.
I know
So I'm gonna say I'm gonna say
recent
recent
history,
history.
yeah,
I'm gonna say X for now, but if I come on the pod next season, I might say O because, like I
yeah,
said,
but
is whoever wins the championship first. Because all well and good to have these players, but if they don't win a championship, that's ultimately why we made the trade, is to win a championship. So if
yeah,
the team that you gave all the draft picks to actually go away and win it, it is a horrible trade because it means you haven't done what you've achieved. But I mean, I think if you go back and you didn't have any of the knowledge of what's going to happen with the Clippers in those preceding years, you'd still make the trade because
well, I was going to say
the
in
performances it
hindsight.
comes off. Mhm.
In hindsight, at the time of the trade, you mentioned it earlier that,
Yeah.
as a Clipper fan, acquiring Kawhi Leonard and Paul George at the time
Hmm.
was monumental, and it probably wasn't that damaging. But now, yeah, a few years on, SGA's at a sort of MVP almost, or I argued that he should have been MVP last year level, and the one of the picks from that trade turned out to be Jalen Williams, who is a very good player and has a high ceiling. And if you
Yeah.
looked at it now, I would say the Thunder are more likely to win a title than the
Yeah.
Clippers.
Yeah. I think especially if they build a dynasty, then yeah, it's
Hmm.
definitely one of the worst trades in recent years. But like I said, I still think if Kawhi comes back, we can compete with them this season. But yeah, it's getting a bit scary. But I think the one thing I'm glad is that we're not in a position to give them more. They've had enough. They've built a
Yeah.
great team. Sam Presti's done a brilliant job with their picks. SJ is a monster. I always knew he was going to be a monster because he was already looking good for the Clippers in his rookie season. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But I'm going to say X for now.
Well, you mentioned Kawhi a few times there about what will happen. So my last one is, do the Clippers need to move on from the Kawhi Leonard legacy?
I think they have this season to prove that he can still perform and be available in the postseason. Otherwise, it needs to be probably done because we've given too much time to him now, and it's no fault of his own. He's had this injury for what, like 8 years or more now, and it
Hmm.
just seems to get progressively worse. But I think if you look along the journey, it isn't always down to it just happening. It's, if you look at 2021, 22, where we went to our first Western Conference Finals, that injury was fairly random. Like, it was Joe Ingles running into his knee, which is not going to be good for anyone, let alone someone who's got a bad history of bad knees, right? So
Hmm.
I think we should have won that title that season if he doesn't get injured. But it's got to the point now where it's like there's just too many playoff series that he's just missing, and it's almost, I think before it was like, oh, it was this moment in the game where someone hit him, but now it's like I don't even know when he picked this injury up. There's no pinpoint. It just happened, right? And it's swelling, and the swelling doesn't go. And I think it's got to the point where they've tried to help him as much as they can with surgeries and rehab. But if he's not able to come back and be effective this season, and at least, if we get to the playoffs, make an appearance, then I think it might be time to reset and look forward to some of the free agents who might want to come out to LA in the next few years. And I think that's the way it's moving. But like I said, he signed a new contract last season for 2-3 years. So he's still got a couple of seasons beyond this. So yeah, remind me what the original question was.
So
It
the
was
state, I guess the
if we'll move
statement
on for him
is,
this season, right?
yeah, I guess the statement is, should the Clippers, no, yeah, the Clippers should move on from the Kawhi legacy. And it sounds like you're a bit torn.
I'm torn. Because, like I said, it's similar to the other question. It's like it depends if he comes back. But I think if you're saying right now that he's done, then yeah, I think it's time to move away from the Kawhi legacy for sure.
I think,
But
I think
yeah,
that's fair
we'll
enough.
see.
We'll see. James, it's been a good chat. Thanks for your time. Before we go, where can we find you on social media and where can we find your podcast?
So Clippers UK on X, and it's the View from the Clipper podcast. We've started it this season with another Clippers content creator, Josh Sexton, who runs the Anfield Wrap. So me and him, yeah, started this season. You can find that over on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, thanks guys for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and we'll have to do this again.
No, thank you. And for us, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and X. And where can they find us on all those platforms, Sam?
With the English, one, and it's one because Glenn.
We only one called With the English.
How to put English on the basketball.